إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. How's everybody doing? Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum. So today we're going to read something from Sheikh Ali al-Haddad, one of the scholars of Riyadh, extremely important, about Haqqul Awlad, or Haqqul Binat, the rights of the boys and girls, the rights of the children. And so the Sheikh is going to mention 9 rights that the children has. So the Sheikh began by, after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending the salat and the salam upon the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that verily from the favors and blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal, which He has bestowed upon His slaves, is the ni'mah or the favor of having children, whether they be male children or female children. He said, so they are the beautification in this dunya, and they are the thing that extends the name or the remembrance of the parents after the parent has passed away. He said, and they are for the parent a part of their earnings, and also a part of their righteous actions, if they rectify and correct and give a good upbringing to the children. Then it shall be written down for them the reward for every good deed the children does. Right? If the parent raises their child right, then every time the child does a good deed is going to be written down for the child and for the parent. He says, and this is because of the great role that the parent played in rectifying the child, making them upright, and teaching them who is their Lord. So keep in mind as you listen to this, he said what? That the benefit goes to the one who raises them. So this also goes for the step-parent, right? It's not just for the one that provides the DNA. It's for the one that actually is in their life, giving them the upbringing, right? He said, so if they if they rectify the child, then the supplication of the child is also from the righteous actions that shall continue on for the parent after the parent has died. Their deeds have stopped and their scroll has been folded up. As comes in the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَتُرْفَعْ دَرَجَاتُهُ فِي الْجَنَّةِ فيقول أن هذا فيقال باستغفار ولدك لك. And this has been narrated from Ibn Majah. He said, verily a person shall be raised in paradise to a high level, and he shall say, how is this for me? And it shall be said to him, this is due to your child seeking forgiveness for you. The Sheikh, he says, this means that when the parent gets in paradise, they're going to be amazed and surprised. How did I get this good level in paradise when my deeds, I know I did not do enough good deeds in the dunya to get to this level? But the reason that they got to this high level was what? Because their child was seeking forgiveness for them after they had died. And as comes in the hadith that has been collected by Imam Muslim, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانِ انْقَطَعَ أَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثَةٍ. When the person dies, their actions are cut off except for 3. Sadaqah jariyah, an ongoing charity. What? An ongoing charity. وَالْعِلْمِ يَنْتَفِعُ بِهِ, and knowledge that he left behind that people can benefit from. وَوَلَدٍ صَالِحٍ يَدْعُو لَهُ, and a righteous child to pray for them. And as a footnote, Sheikh Uthaymeen, he says that when your Muslim parent dies, he said, you can make hajj on their behalf. You can give sadaqah on their behalf. He said, but what's the best thing that you can do for your parent? Make dua. He says, because dua is mentioned in this hadith. He says, so there's nothing you can do better for your deceased parent than make dua for them. All right? Now, he says, likewise, so here, if your child lives righteous, he'll benefit you. He said, and if your child dies, he'll benefit you. How is that? He said, if your child dies, then this will be heavy on the scale of the parents, and it will raise them in levels likewise for those who are patient and seek the reward. He says, and if your child dies before they reach the age of puberty, then this child will intercede for their fathers and their mothers, and there will be a hijab and a screen for them from the hellfire. He says, فَهُمْ إِنْ عَاشُوا نَفَعُوا وَإِنْ مَاتُوا شَفَعُوا. He says, so if they live, they benefit, and if they die, they intercede. Right? Look at the ni'mah that Allah Ta'ala has gave us that we can benefit from our children if we raise them right. Now, as a footnote, Ya Akhwan, we see that from the non-Muslims, right? If they want to get benefit from their child, you see that they strive real hard to get their child to be maybe a professional athlete. Why? Because they know if he grows up and becomes rich, he's going to buy me a house, right? As one father, he spent $250,000 each year to get his child to become a NASCAR driver. I just read in the paper. So we have a promise from the best of mankind what we can get if we raise our child right. We're not trying to get a house in the dunya that has a bathroom in it. We're trying to get the house without a bathroom. That's in Jannah. Right? We got the real promise. All right? So he says, now the children have a great deal of rights on the parents that have been mentioned in the Kitab and the Sunnah. Naam. He says, so how many rights do we say that we're going to mention today? 9, right? Right number 1. Choosing a good mother and likewise choosing a good father. He said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave a great incitement for the spouses to choose those who have a good religion as much as they are able to, so they can be a help for the spouse in obeying their Lord and help them in raising the children. And we're going to mention the hadith again when he said, تُنْكَحُ الْمَرْأَةِ لِأَرْبَعَةٍ, that the woman is married for 4 things: لِمَالِهَا وَلِحَسِبِهَا وَلِجِمَالِهَا وَلِدِينِهَا. That she's married for her wealth, she's married for her lineage, she's married for her attractiveness, and she's married for her deen. Marry the one for the deen so you may prosper. This hadith has been collected in Bukhari and Muslim. And also the hadith, he said, إِنَّ الدُّنْيَا كُلَّهَا مَتَاعٌ وَخَيْرُ مَتَاعِ الدُّنْيَا الْمَرْأَةُ صَالِحَةٌ. He said that the dunya, all of it is enjoyment, and the best enjoyment is a righteous woman. Collected in Muslim. And likewise, he has gave an incitement for the guardians of the women to choose a righteous man. He mentioned the hadith, إِذَا أَتَاكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلَقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ. If there come to you, O walis, O guardians, those whom religion you are pleased with, and etiquette and conduct and character you are pleased with, then marry them off. And if you do not do so, إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ عَرِيضٌ. If you do not do so, there shall be corruption in the land and widespread evil. So what's the first right that your child has over you? Choosing a good mother and a good father. Right number 2. The supplication before intimacy. This comes from the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, that the Messenger of Allah, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, أَمَّا لَوْ أَنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ إِذَا أَرَادَ أَنْ يَأْتِ أَهْلَهُ. He said, if one of you desires to go to his family, he said that حِينَ يَأْتِ أَهْلَهُ, then when he goes to his family, let him say, Bismillah. This is the dua, right? The first part is Bismillah, right? Allahumma. This is if anybody's writing it down, right? جَنِّبْنَا الشَّيْطَانِ. So this is Bismillah. O Allah, save us from the shaitan, right? وَجَنِّبْنَا الشَّيْطَانَ مَا رَزَقْتَنَا. And make shaitan like to be far away from that which you provide us with. He said, then if it's decreed that you have a child, the shaitan will never be able to harm him. Collected in hadith, Bukhari and Muslim. What's the first right? Choosing a good mate. The second right? Choosing a good, making the dua. The third right? Choosing a good name. The Sheikh says the name has a tremendous effect upon the righteousness of the person who receives the name. He said, and an evil name also has an effect upon the person that has the name. And then he mentioned the hadith, أَحَبُّ الْأَسْمَاءِ إِلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى Abdullah wa Abdul Rahman. That the most beloved names to Allah is Abdullah and Abdul Rahman. He says, and so there has come in the Sunnah that there are some names that are hated. And these names are names that denote a type of self-purification, right? Or also names that are haram or names that denote a person being a slave of other than Allah Ta'ala. Now, Dr. Muhammad Ghalib, he mentioned something. He said that he has been informed by some trustworthy brothers that a man who was from a non-Muslim country, a non-Arabic speaking country, he looked inside the Quran, and it is as though he was speaking about the transliteration. Right? Keep in mind that Sheikh Saleh al-Sheikh, he says it's not permissible to transliterate the Quran. It's not permissible because you'll change the meanings, right? But this person, they looked inside and they found a word, and so they gave this name to the child. And the name that they named their son was Min al-Khasirin. Min al-Khasirin, that meaning from the losers. And so the boy, when he got older, and he realized what his name meant, the Sheikh said that he put an idafa. He added another name to his name. He added Laysa. So he would be Laysa min al-khasirin. I'm not from the losers. Like Laysa is something which negates. So his name was I'm not from the losers. All right. So the Sheikh said, so it's important to choose a good name, right? We know that the name books get people in trouble, right? So make sure that you know the actual name that you're choosing and make sure that it's a good name, right? So the first right was what? Choosing a good spouse. Second, making the dua. Third, choosing a good name. Number 4 is what? Number 4. Now, this one is going to be some ikhtilaf about this one. So if you want to write this one or you want to put an asterisk by it, then you can, no problem. This is Sheikh Ali Haddad. He says it's prescribed to call the adhan in the ear of the child. He says, and this is based upon the hadith of Abi Rafi'. But some of the scholars, like Sheikh Uthaymeen, he says this hadith is weak. Right? But some scholars say that the adhan part is strong, but the calling the iqamah is weak. So the Sheikh Ali Haddad, he's of the opinion that the hadith is strong, so therefore he says that you call the adhan in the child's ear. But like I said, there's some ikhtilaf about that. Number 5, cutting the hair of the baby. Which baby do you cut the hair? Of the male or the female? The boy. The Sheikh is of the opinion that, and of course you may find some ikhtilaf about this too, the Sheikh was of the opinion that you cut the hair of the baby boy and that you weigh the hair and you give charity based upon the price of silver. Number 6, that you have the aqiqah, right? He says, and you do the aqiqah, meaning that you sacrifice an animal, whether it's a male child or a female child. And this is to give your gratitude to Allah Ta'ala for the favor that He has given you and to acknowledge His virtue that He has given you a child. He says, and for the boy child is how many? 2. And for the girl is 1. And he said, and from the wisdoms of having you also sacrifice for the girl is to destroy the notion that there's something wrong with having a girl. The people in the time of Jahiliyyah, they didn't like to have girls. So this destroys the notion that there's something wrong with having girls. And he said, and this is based upon the hadith, al-ghulam shatani. For the male child, 2 sheep, mukafi'atan, that are similar. Al-jariya shatun. And for the female child, 1 sheep. Okay? What was the first right, Yaquan? Choosing a good spouse. Number 2. The dua, number 3, choosing a good name. Number 4, calling the adhan. Number 5, cutting the hair. Number 6, the akika. Number 7, you're paying attention, right? Number 7, he says this is the circumcision. Says, and this is for the boy wajib, to circumcise your male child. Now, of course, with the female, you're going to find some ikhtilaf, but the sheikh said that with the female, you have to make sure it's someone who knows what they're doing. And if you find someone that knows what they're doing, then this can be something that you can do or not do, but for the male child, it's obligatory. Right? Number 8. Number 8, ya akhwan. It is that you teach your child manners and you educate them and you cultivate them upon good character. You teach them tawheed of the Lord of the Alameen, that there is no one deserving of worship except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that you don't seek shelter in anyone except for Allah azza wa jal, and that no one can bring you benefit except for Allah azza wa jal, and no one can repel harm except for Allah azza wa jal. So number 8 is to teach and educate your child. Naam. He said, and when they reach the age of tamyiz, he said that you have to teach, when they reach the age of understanding, and we're going to explain this, inshallah. He said you're going to have to teach them the etiquettes of purification and prayer, and teach them the Al-Fatiha and small surahs. Now, Sheikh Sulaiman Ruhaili brings a great benefit with this, right? So number 8 is what? Teach and educate your child. Sheikh Sulaiman Ruhaili, he says, it is upon us to raise our children and to raise them upon the remembrance of Allah Ta'ala, and get our children accustomed to remembering Allah Ta'ala from a young age. He said, and I have mentioned to my beloved brothers over and over again, it is upon us as parents that we do not let anyone precede us in teaching our children and daughters the Al-Fatiha. He said, don't let anyone teach your child the Al-Fatiha before you do. And don't let anyone teach your child, subhanAllah, after the salat, before you do. He said, you do that. He said, because if you as a parent teach them the Al-Fatiha, then every time they recite it, Allah will write down for you a reward. He said, and if we teach them subhanallah, then every time they say it, Allah will write down for you a reward. He said, we may be dead and buried in our graves, and our reward will continue to flow due to the remembrance of our children, because we are the ones who taught them to remember Allah Azza wa Jal. He said, unfortunately, many other people today, they teach their children things that will not benefit them, such as comedy and entertainment and the like. He said, rather, some of them are diligent in having their children memorize things that don't benefit them, but they are not diligent in having them memorize the Al-Fatiha and the remembrance of Allah Ta'ala that will benefit them. Now, he says, and then back to what Sheikh Ali said, he said, and you have to teach them etiquette, how to eat, meaning with the right hand, how to drink, how to dress, how to sleep, how to wake up, as much as you are able to. He said, and you teach them shay'an fa shay'an, bit by bit. Naam, he mentioned hadith, murru abana'akum bi salat li sab'ah. Order your children to pray at 7. وَضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرَةٍ. And spank them for it at 10. And separate their beds. Now, the Sheikh, he says, what does it mean when you order your child to pray? He says, when you order your child to pray, and how old is your child when you order them to pray? 7, ya akhwan. It's not some of the people, they take a 2-year-old child and try to make them pray. Prophet ﷺ says 7. 7. Order your child to pray at 7, right? He's going to mention some nice details about this. He said, so this doesn't mean that you say to your child, Salli, pray. He said, rather it means that you teach your child how to pray. You teach them how to clean themselves properly, how to make wudu, and you teach them the prayer. And then for the young boys, you teach them to be diligent in praying in the masajid and to wearing clothes that are above the ankles. And Ya Akhwan, and some of the people, as mentioned, some of the people, they ask sometimes, is it obligatory to pray inside the masjid for the men? So, I don't know. I know it's 27 times better. And if you're going to need that 27 times across that bridge, then you may not want to worry about the ikhtilaf if it's wajib or not. But come to the masjid. 27 times better. If your supervisor told you, if you can work from home and you get your regular salary. If you come in to the job, I'm going to multiply your salary times 27. You be there before you get out the phone. He'd be on the phone and you'd be standing right in front of him. Right? 27 times better, ya ikhwan. Now, he said, and you have to teach your daughters about the salat, to pray in their home and to wear proper hijab and to cover themselves and to be far away from mixing with men. He said, so when they reach the age of puberty, they will have been cultivated upon that. Now, this is a very good question, ya ikhwan, that someone asked Sheikh Suleiman Ruhaili. They said, is it obligatory upon the guardian of the child to order them to make up missed prayers? Right? The small child. So we begin to order the child to pray at 7, right? But you only can spank them for it at what age? 10. So if you have a child that's 7 years old and they miss, and keep in mind, a very important point, is 7 by the Islamic calendar, right? When you're doing with the acts of ibadah, refer back to the Islamic calendar, not the calendar that we use here in the West, right? So if your child misses a prayer, your child sleeps to Fajr at age 7 or 8, is it obligatory upon the parent to tell that child to make that missed prayer up? Yeah. Any younger than 10, if the child is younger than 10, if the child misses a prayer, they miss dua, they miss asa, does the parent have to tell that child to make that prayer up? Okay. The brothers say no. Anybody say yes? Okay, we got ikhtilaf in the masjid. Some say yes, some say no, right? Sheikh Suleiman, he said, it's obligatory upon the guardian to command the child to pray. Based upon the statement, Murru abana'akum bi salat li sab'a. Command your children to pray at age 7. He said this command is directed towards the guardians. It's not directed towards the child. He said, therefore, the correct viewpoint of the scholars is that it's obligatory upon the guardian to command the child to pray when they reach 7, although the prayer is not obligatory upon the child when he's 7. Right? The prayer is not obligatory upon the child at age 7, but it's obligatory upon the parent to tell them to pray at age 7. He said because the child is not obligatory to pray until they reach puberty. It's not obligatory upon them. He said, so the child is not sinning if he doesn't pray. But if the father doesn't command them to pray, he's sinning. See? The child at 7 is not obligatory upon him to pray, but it's obligatory upon the father to tell him to pray. So if the child at 7 doesn't pray, he's not sinning, but if the father doesn't tell him to pray, he's sinning. Right? He said, so if the child misses a prayer, it's obligatory upon the parent to tell them to make that prayer up. This is not because it's obligatory upon the child. Rather, it's only because commanding the child is obligatory. To get them accustomed to the importance of the prayer. He says, so the parents cannot be lackadaisical in this. He says, now you find some parents and the lackadaisical with wiping over the socks. He said, if their child comes to them, and this is something that we always joke about, the children always have wudu. Children, if you ask a child, do you have wudu? It's rare you're going to find a child that says he doesn't have wudu, right? He says, so if you find a child and he says, Dad, can I wipe over my socks? And you know that he put those socks on when he was not in a state of purification, say no, take his socks off, wash your feet, and then put them on in a state of purification. He said, don't be lackadaisical with this. Okay, now the next issue that Sheikh Suleiman mentions is how to beat the child, right? Because we hear the word beat at age 10, and it doesn't mean a beat like we may think, right? So he says the spanking should not hurt them. He said it should not cause them injury. It should not break bones. And more importantly, it should not break their spirit. It should not break their heart. He said the spanking should be something to teach the child, not one that will cause them to flee. And the Sheikh explains that like you take a miswak and hit the child with a miswak, just to show them manners. He said some of the fathers, they command their kids to pray the Fajr prayer. And then the father goes to Fajr prayer. And when he comes back, he finds his child still sleeping. He beats the child awake. He said, he beats him in his face. He says, and this is against the legislation. He said, and it's never allowed to hit in the face. He said, and some parents, they try to embarrass their children. So they'll spank them in front of their brothers or their friends. He said, and some of them even command the older children to beat the younger children. He says, and some of the parents, they beat their children to the point that it makes the child hate the prayer. The child hates the prayer. And the Sheikh Suleiman, he said, I met a young man. And the young man had been in prison. He had like a rough life. And the man said, you know, Sheikh, I just started praying again. And he said, why? He said, because my father used to beat me for the prayer. And then he ordered my big brother to beat me for the prayer. But when my father died, stop praying. All right? Because now he was only praying because his father would beat him for it. When his father died, he stopped praying. But alhamdulillah, he started praying again. Now, he said some parents beat their children because they are upset. He said, and this is not permissible. He said, it is not permissible for us to beat our children because we are upset. He said, we only spank our children to benefit the child. He said, for this reason, it is not permissible to beat the child who does not understand, like the 3 or 4-year-old. He said, because he doesn't know what's going on. All he knows is that he's in pain. That's the only thing he knows. He said, so you have to teach them how to make wudu by making wudu in front of them and praying in front of them. And the Sheikh Suleiman reiterates, you don't tell the child to pray before 7. What number was that? So this is number 9. Make dua for your child that they will have good. He says, because verily dua is the strongest means to actualize that which you want or intend. Dua is the strongest means. هُنَالِكَ دَعَا زَكَرِيَّ رَبَّهُ. He mentions this ayat. And Zachariah called upon his Lord, Rabbi habli min ladunka dhurriyatan tayyibah. He said, give me from you a righteous child. He said he didn't ask him for a child only. He said he asked him for a righteous child that fears Allah Ta'ala, that would desire Allah's reward. So you have to make dua for the child, right? So let's go back through these again. What's number 1? Choosing a good spouse. What's number 2? Supplication. Number 3, choosing a good name. 4, calling the adhan. Number 5, cutting the hair. 6, the aqiqah. Number 7, circumcision. Number 8, teaching. And number 9, dua. He said, and because you have to make dua for your child, you can't make dua against your child. He said, the sunnah comes and prohibits making dua against your child, as the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, لا تدعوا على أنفسكم. Don't make dua against yourselves. ولا تدعوا على أولادكم. And don't make dua against your children. What's number 7 again? Circumcision. And don't make dua against your servants. ولا تدعوا على أموالكم. And don't make dua against your wealth. He says, because if you do so and it coincides with that hour that Allah Ta'ala answers it, you're going to cause some harm to them. So now we're going to mention some negligence from the parents. That was 9 rights, right? Now we're going to mention about 6 or 7 mistakes that a lot of the parents make. May Allah Ta'ala rectify us. He said many of the parents, mothers and fathers, they have a great deal of negligence concerning the rights of their sons and daughters. And it results in an evil ending. And it results in the parents having a lot of regret when that time that regret has no benefit. He says, so number 1 is the parents being lackadaisical in their children praying. The parents being lackadaisical in their children making the salat. He says, so you find that some parents, he said, they don't know if their child prays or not, and they don't care. Although we have been commanded to order your children to pray, right? He said some parents don't know if their kids pray, and they don't care. He said, but if they're absent from school or work, then they have a problem. And there's a question, Yaqwan, that was asked to Sheikh Albani, right? And we know Sheikh Albani, mashallah, he was very intelligent. A man came to Sheikh Albani and said, Sheikh Albani, he said, Sheikh, I have a son who has stopped praying. He doesn't pray. So what's your advice? And the Sheikh said, how old is he? And the man said, Huwa kabir. He's big. She said, no, how old is he? The man said, he's 19. She said, 19. He said, so here we know that it is certain that when the father had his son, that when his son was young, he didn't order him to pray. He said, and maybe the father didn't pray. He said, or he prayed, but he was careless in fulfilling the command, order your children to pray at 7 and spank them for it at age 10. He said, because it's hard to imagine that a father and mother who were involved in the development and education of their child, whether a boy or girl, and they followed the command to order their children to pray at 7 and spank them at 10. It's hard to imagine that they were doing that. And it's hard to imagine that this father was taking his son to the masjid and getting him accustomed to making wudu from the age of 7. He said, so when he reaches the age of responsibility, then he knows how to do that. He says, but now he doesn't want to do it. Why? Because he was not taught in the beginning. He says, and that's why we as parents, we carry the blame. He said, once that child has reached the age of responsibility, he said, because the father didn't do it in the beginning, he said, and now when your son is 18 or 19 and doesn't pray, if you beat him for the prayer, he's going to beat you back. If you fight him for the prayer, he's going to fight you back. Now he's a grown man. He said, therefore, all you can do now is say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That's all you can do, and make dua for him. He said, why? He said, because the child is like a small, sweet tree. Listen to this. He said, the child like a small, fragile tree. He said, when you see that tree, that little small tree leaning to the east or to the west or to the north or the south, you can make that tree lean back how you want it to because it's soft and you can mold it, right? He says, but if you let that tree keep on leaning in the wrong direction, when it gets big, now what can you do with it? Can't do anything with it. As we say in North Carolina, we say that once that tree gets big, you got to chop it down. And that's like that child. Once that child gets big, all you can do is chop them down now. You can't do anything with them. So you have to mold that tree when it's a small tree and moldable. Now, he says, now, if that father was doing what he has been commanded to do, and his son still disobeyed when he got older, he says, then he falls in line with the example of Nuh alayhi salam. When he said, Ya bunayya urkab ma'ana, oh my dear son, get on the ship with us. He says, and he's like Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam raised his son right, but his son still disbelieved in him when he got older. Okay? SubhanAllah, ya akhwan. Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says something tremendous, ya akhwan. Shaykh Uthaymeen, Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him. He says, some of the parents, they make an excuse. They say, I cannot raise my child because they've gotten too big for me to raise now. Right? And the Shaykh said, if we say for the sake of argument, that's true. Or if we say it's really true. He says, and we say if your child has gotten too big for you to raise, it's still your fault. He says, because you failed in doing the job in the beginning. He says, and you failed in the command of Allah Ta'ala in the beginning. He says, and you left them to go about to and fro and did not ask about what they were doing. And listen to this, Akhwan. He said, and you were not sociable with your children. لا تجتمع معهم على غداء ولا العشاء. He said, you didn't even sit down and have lunch and dinner with your child. He said, you didn't sit down and have lunch and dinner with your child. Therefore, there became a wedge between the two of you. He said, and so you fled from them, and in return, they fled from you. He said, so why do you think now when they're big that they want to hear anything you have to say? Right? It's a big thing, Yaquan. How many parents just sit down and have lunch with your child? Have dinner with your child? You find parents on that internet, on the computer. Back in the day, dinner was family time. Everyone sat down and had dinner as a family. And this is a no phone zone. You put your phone down. Let's have dinner together. You'd be surprised how much that means to a child. Brothers on the internet looking up benefits. When are we going to put the benefits into action? Sit down and take your child, to a park. Spend time with your child. Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr, he mentioned something about Imam al-Sa'di, something called Imam al-Sa'di, something, a great benefit, right? And we know this is one of the Imams of the Ummah, right? He said, so Imam al-Sa'di, he said that one day he was, and we know Sheikh was very busy. And this is the same Sheikh who Sheikh Abdul Rahman was going over the book for him this weekend. He said, so he was going one day, leaving his home, and at the time his daughter was very young. And she had her young friend with her. And so they were having a tea party. And so the friend of his daughter invited the Sheikh to the tea party. And the Sheikh said, okay, I'll make a date to come and have tea with you guys tomorrow. He said, and so the next day, the Sheikh came and actually had the tea party with these two children. He said, and he sat there and he's playing with their toys and he's drinking the fake tea and everything, and he's having conversation with them, having a tea party. And the Sheikh said, and the amazing thing about the story is, do you know who narrated the story? His daughter, when she became a grown woman, she never forgot it. When she was a grown woman, she narrated, she remembered when her father had a tea party with her. So if we're not having tea parties with our daughters, Jaquan, 15 minutes to a child is hours. To us, it's 15 minutes. Right? Nah. So the first negligent is what, Jaquan? Not giving concern to your children praying. Number 2, television. There's some of the parents, they allow their children to watch, and their wives to watch anything on the TV. All that evil. One of the scholars, Jaquan, he said that if someone were to say to you, brother, there's a man in your home. There's a man in your home. He said you would run home ready to kill that man. He said, but you get home and realize, oh, that's a man you let in. That's the man on the TV. That's the one that you brought in your home. He said, so you bring these men in your home night and day and let your wives, your daughters watch these men. They looking at these men and says, where's your jealousy? And he mentioned about one of the things that men watch with their wives. He said, wrestling. Wrestling, right? That's big in the South, right? He said, Allah Musta'an. He said, I challenge, right? He said, I challenge any man to put on the clothes that the wrestler has and walk around your daughter, your mother, and your wife with it. He said, put those clothes on and walk around your family with it. He said, but you are close to your family. You won't wear those clothes, but you let them look at another man with those clothes on. And they got all these muscles, and they turning around and gyrating and stuff, and you letting your wife look at this man on the TV in wrestling trunks. SubhanAllah. He said, and know that your wife gets the same desires that you have. And we know that what? There are many men who can reach the perfection, but only 4 women. So women are naturally meant to be maybe less in that area than the men. He said, so you want your wife get the same desires, so you're going to let your wife look at that man on the TV? He said, but why do men do it? He said, because they have a secret agreement. You let me look, I'll let you look. You don't say nothing, I won't say nothing. Number 3, the internet. He says many of the parents, he said, subhanAllah. And the internet, he said, this includes the smartphone, right? He says many of the parents, if they were to just open up their child's cell phone, they would find some unspeakable evil and corruption there. Unspeakable evil. Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Junayd, he says that if you have a computer that attaches to the internet, he said, put it in a central location. Don't let the kid have it in their private room. Because especially, Yaquan, these kids are smart. They know how to get up there and erase stuff and change stuff, and you think they're looking at, that they reading the Quran, and they could be looking at anything. Because a lot of parents don't know how to maneuver the computer like their children do. So put it in a central location. As we mentioned last night, back in the day, the phone was always in the middle of the house. So even the boys would be afraid to try to call the girl because the father may pick the phone up. Now everyone's child has a cell phone. And as Sheikh Fawzan, he says, before it was hard to get, you had to work to do evil. Now you can be sitting on your bed and bring the evil right to you. So, what's number one again? Being lackadaisical order than to pray. Number two, television. Number three, internet. Number four, and this may sound like it does not relate to us, but it does. Said traveling on vacation to the non-Muslim countries. Right? Now, being that we live in a non-Muslim country, how does this relate? Ya Akhwan, you know, hadani Allah wa iyyakum. I've met some people, some brothers, and they make plans to go to places like France from America. And you say, oh, mashallah. What year did you make Hajj? Didn't make Hajj. What year did you make Umrah? Didn't make Umrah. So you didn't make Hajj and Umrah, you're going to drive over Mecca to go to France. SubhanAllah. Priorities, ya Akhwan. Number 5. Allowing the children to come and go as they please. And not knowing who their friends are. And the Sheikh, he says, some of the parents, they say, I trust my children. They say, I trust my children. And he says, SubhanAllah, why do you trust yourself? Who can say that they are not going to fall into evil? Who from the adults can say, I'm never going to go astray. I'm a believer. I'm not going to fornicate. I'm not going to commit shirk. Who can say that? He says, so if you can't trust yourself, how do you trust your child? That's what Sheikh Fawzan said. You have to look in your child's phone. Take the child's phone and look in it. Kids got passwords on their phone. SubhanAllah. And parents don't know the password. And the parents paying for the phone. Number 6, clothing. Clothing. He said some of the parents, they look away or they turn a blind eye to the clothing that their women folk wear. So they let them go out into the marketplace wearing clothes. He said to the point that the jilbab has become a dress that needs to be covered up itself. It's supposed to be the outer covering. Now the jilbab has morphed into a dress, and you got to cover that up. But now they wear it as though it's the real outside garment. He says, and likewise, you find the young men. It's that their fathers let them go out wearing clothes that men shouldn't wear. You know, like the skinny jeans. It's things that you wouldn't expect to see a man wearing. Right? Number 7, he says, being lackadaisical in teaching your children the correct aqidah. The correct aqidah. Of course, this is the most important, of course. He says, so you find some of them, and they have the beliefs of the Sufiya, the Takfiri, the Kharij, the Khawarij, and things like this. And of course, ya Akhwan, a lot of the kids, when you send them off to college, they get attacked by the atheists, right? And they try to take the aqidah from our children. And also, I don't know about this area right here, but in North Carolina, the kuffar give da'wah hardcore. It used to be back when I was growing up that the Jehovah's Witness would come knocking your door on what day? Saturday. Now they come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now they catch you in the parking lot of Kroger. Really. And also the Mormons come out. And before it was the Mormon boys riding the bicycle. Now the Mormon girls come in a car. SubhanAllah. I had some young Mormon men came to my home some months ago. And when I opened the door, they get a little guy with a thobe on, they get, kind of taken aback. But, we relaxed them and talked a little bit. And SubhanAllah, their belief is ajib. And you have to teach your children how foolish their belief is. So, it was about Maghrib time. I want to make a short conversation. So I asked the guy, I said, okay, well, who do you worship? He said, worship God. I said, okay, is there only one God? He said, yeah, there's only one God. He said, but he has a son. I said, okay. I said, so that's 2, right? He said, yeah. He said, and there's the Holy Spirit. I said, okay, that's 3. He said, yeah. And then he said, and God has a wife too. I said, okay, that's 4. He said, yeah. So how many gods your wife? He said, 1. I said, SubhanAllah. He said, and I told him something he didn't think I knew. I said, and that they believe that Iblis, Akhu Isa ibn Maryam. They believe that Iblis is the son of Isa, because they believe that Iblis is Allah's son. It's ridiculous. So it was then he had to admit, yeah, we got 4, but, and I said, well, you worship 4 gods? He said, and that was the end of it. And keep in mind, it's not that you really don't want to get into a discussion with the people unless you are prepared for it. I took several months to study what they believe, so, I was, felt, I could have a conversation with them. Likewise, the Jehovah's Witness, they have a belief that's completely ridiculous, that they don't believe in the hellfire. And they believe that only 144,000 are going to paradise, right? And they believe that if you don't accept their message in this life, do you know what happens? You come back to life and you get another chance, and Jesus is going to give you dawah himself personally. That's so okay. If I can't go to paradise, and they believe that the prophets of the past aren't going to paradise. So there's 144,000. So, okay, so I probably didn't make that cut right, 144,000. Okay, so I can't go to paradise. If I don't believe you, there's no hellfire. If I don't believe you, when I die, I'm raised to life, get a second chance. Why are you knocking on my door right now? Waste of time. Alhamdulillah. All right. Anyway, so the Sheikh, he said, not teaching your child the proper aqeedah. And he said, and don't you know that your child on Yawm al-Qiyamah is going to hold you accountable for that? He said, your child is going to grab you by your neck and stand in front of Allah Ta'ala, and they're going to say, oh, my Lord, this is my father who didn't teach me my deen. This is my father who didn't teach me your tawheed. This is my father who didn't teach me the sunnah of your prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, your daughter is going to grab you by the neck in front of your Lord and say, oh Lord, oh my Lord, this is my father who didn't teach me your tawheed. He didn't teach me the sunnah. He didn't teach me the proper hijab. Brother, he's the one who bought me the clothes that I had on. He's the one who put me in the university to mix with the men. He said he's the one who saw me watching these movies and listened to this music, and he didn't say anything. He said, Yawma yafirru mar'u min akhi, the day that the person is going to flee from his brother. Right? He said, so don't think that your children are going to take up for you Yawm al-Qiyamah. He said, no, they are going to distance themselves from you and leave you holding the bag. Nah. So inshallah ta'ala, I think it's time for the salat, inshallah ta'ala. So that's basically it. Some of the rights of the children and some of the ways that the parents are deficient. May Allah ta'ala rectify us and our children and forgive us. And I'd like to thank the brothers here. This was some of the absolute best hospitality that I've ever seen. May Allah ta'ala put it on your scale of good deeds, Yawm al-Qiyamah. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.